I have always said that I thought Bortlen would be a snitch in this case.
In the streets, snitching is worse than death, but YNW Bortlen just cracked.
If you want to accept the deal, you can accept the deal today. In exchange for that, I'm going to adjudicate you guilty on the 2 accessory counts.
Facing life behind bars, he lost it and dropped jaw-dropping evidence linking YNW Melly to the murders.
In the video, that is the first time detectives learned that there was actually 4 people in that gray Jeep.
So this is bad news for Melly. Bad news for Melly.
The latest video that Bortlen released has the streets going wild. Stay tuned as I reveal it all. The decision that rocked the hood. For over 6 years, YNW Bortlen had lived by this code, standing solid with his childhood homie YNW Melly through arrests, court hearings, and a brutal murder trial. But on September 9th, 2025, that street code died in the YNW case. Just hours before his own trial was supposed to start, YNW Bortlen took a plea deal that could send his childhood soldier Melly straight to death row. Bortlen's lawyers had been prepping for war, potential jurors were already summoned, and suddenly everything changed. After years of maintaining his innocence and riding with his homie, Bortlen was staring down a legal reality that would have broken even the hardest street veterans. The charges stacked against him were brutal.
In case number 19-1871 CF10A, right now, you're charged as follows. Counts 1 and 2 is murder in the first degree with a firearm. Those are capital felonies, which means it's a mandatory life sentence. If the jury convicts you of count 1 or count 2 as charged, that's life in Florida State Prison.
But that was just the appetizer on this legal nightmare menu.
In your other case, which is case number 23-10643 CF10A, you're charged as follows. Count 1 is tampering with a witness in a capital felony. That is punishable by life in Florida State Prison, all right, as the maximum penalty.
The prosecution had systematically added more charges over the years, each one carrying the potential for a life sentence, creating a perfect storm of pressure.
So right now, as to all the charges that you're facing, the maximum possible penalties are as follows. It's life in Florida State Prison, followed by 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 75 years in Florida State Prison.
Criminal defense attorney Bruce Rivers, who's seen this type of pressure break the hardest individuals, analyzed the situation with street-level honesty.
I have always said that I thought Bortlen would be a snitch in this case. And so I'm shocked that he's not. And I don't hear anything in this plea agreement that requires it. He's taken a deal where he's getting, 10 years in, 6 years on probation. He's already got 7 in. He might do a couple more years, depending upon how Florida works their system. If he doesn't get credit for good time, then he's probably got at least 3 years, 3 or 4 years left to do.
The actual plea hearing was like watching a masterclass in legal procedure. The judge took extraordinary care to ensure that Bortlen understood exactly what he was agreeing to and what he was giving up.
Whether you resolve the case by way of a negotiated plea or an open plea to me, or you resolve the case by way of a trial, it doesn't matter to me at all. But due to the resources that have been devoted to this case, I have 250 jurors summoned for jury duty starting tomorrow. So I want to be very thorough with you here this afternoon, because if you wake up tomorrow or the next day and you decide you've changed your mind and you want to resolve this case, both cases, by way of a jury trial, that's not going to happen. All right? If you want to have a trial, the trial starts tomorrow. If you want to accept the deal, you can accept the deal today.
Under the terms of his plea agreement, Bortlen dodged the murder charges completely.
In exchange for that, I'm going to adjudicate you guilty on the 2 accessory counts as well as the tampering count. I'm going to sentence you to 10 years in Florida State Prison. That will be followed by 6 years of reporting probation.
But the real price of this deal was what Bortlen would have to give up in return. And this is where the street started calling him a rat. The judge made it crystal clear that providing information was part of the package.
I guess at some point after the fact, the state wants to take a proffer from you or have a discussion with you, ask you some questions about whatever that may be. What I want you to understand, sir, is I guess that's part of this negotiated resolution, but your answers to any of those questions, whatever they might be, have no bearing on me and have no bearing on this negotiated resolution. In other words, the deal you've negotiated is the deal you've negotiated, and that's the ballgame.
The proffer requirement, basically a sworn statement where Bortlen would have to spill everything he knows. This represents the most dangerous part of the deal for Melly. By pleading guilty to accessory after the fact charges, Bortlen legally admitted that murders happened and that he helped cover them up. This admission directly destroys the defense theory that the deaths were from a real drive-by shooting, eliminating one of Melly's main arguments. The DNA acknowledgement in Bortlen's plea gives prosecutors even more ammunition, confirming he was in the vehicle when the crimes went down. Criminal defense attorney Bruce Rivers understood the harsh reality of what Bortlen was facing and what he'd have to do.
So here's what happens. He goes and he testifies, or talks to the prosecutor in a proffer. His lawyer's there, the agents on the case are there, the prosecutor's there. They ask him whatever they want, right? And nothing he says can be held against him in that proffer. Nothing. And this is what they call a snitch session.
Rivers' blunt assessment of what this meant for Melly was devastating.
With this, Melly's goose is kind of cooked. And how does that affect somebody's testimony when they're accepting something of value? Well, it does call into question their motives. How do you turn down, basically, I'll let you walk out of this jail in a couple of years if you testify. Otherwise, you're going to go for life if you're convicted. So this is bad news for Melly. Bad news for Melly.
Shortly after the plea deal, around September 10th and 11th, 2025, Bortlen shared a freestyle rap recorded from jail. In the freestyle, he went hard defending himself against the plea deal criticism and straight up denied snitching accusations, asserting his loyalty to Melly and dismissing all the internet chatter. The bars that were captured included powerful statements about his situation. I'm 10 toes down, hold it down, stay solid to hate. They quit to praise a nigga. I'm a young nigga at the G just getting my life sentence. What the I look like taking a deal that hurt my nigga? What the I look like giving a about how y'all feel? I'm a young fly nigga out the G. Just skated my life sentence. The freestyle framed the plea as a smart move for self-preservation without throwing anyone under the bus while affirming his street credibility. Silly you niggas better stop playing on my top. Like y'all don't know what the going on, man. Free Melly, YNW, peace boys. Bortlen's lawyer also shut down snitch rumors in an interview, confirming no cooperation against Melly. Attorney Fred Haddad was emphatic in his statements to the media. I don't represent snitches. YNW Bortlen is not a snitch, and he will not be cooperating or testifying in Melly's trial. Anyone who claims differently has not seen the plea deal and has no idea what they're talking about. Following the plea, Bortlen was transferred from Broward County Jail to the South Florida Reception Center on September 16, 2025, where his dreadlocks were cut and a new bald mugshot was taken. His projected release date is January 6, 2032, accounting for time served. For Melly, who had been locked down since February 2019, Bortlen's decision represented perhaps the ultimate betrayal in street terms. His retrial, scheduled for January 2027, will likely feature Bortlen's cooperation and inside knowledge, giving prosecutors the insider information they've been missing. What started as a story about brotherhood, music, and shared dreams from the trenches of Gifford, Florida, has become a complex legal drama that raises questions about loyalty and the price of survival in America's criminal justice system. From the trenches to the trap, the whole YNW Melly and YNW Bortlen situation is straight up the wildest hood drama that's been playing out in Florida courts for over 6 years now. And trust me, this story got more twists than a bag of pretzels. YNW Melly, government name Jamel Maurice Demons, was born May 1st, 1999 in Gifford, Florida. Shawty came up in the struggle for real. His mama Jamie Demons King had him when she was just 14 years old. No pops in the picture, just raw determination and that Gifford grind mentality. From this rough environment emerged what would become the YNW movement, and that acronym, depending on who you ask, stood for either Young New Wave or Young World. YNW Melly, Bortlen, Sack Chaser, and Juvie were childhood soldiers from Gifford, Florida, bonding over beats and shared experiences in an environment where tomorrow ain't promised. They formed their crew around 2016, collaborating on tracks and holding each other down in what seemed like an unbreakable bond. YNW Bortlen, real name Cortland Malik Henry, was born around 1999 to 2000 and is a founding member of the YNW Collective. This cat grew up right alongside Melly and Gifford, and they developed one of them friendships that's supposed to be bulletproof through the come up and the setbacks. While Melly was the one spitting bars that caught mainstream attention, Bortlen stayed loyal to the collective's mission and was always ready to ride for his people. The other two soldiers in their tight circle were just as crucial to understanding how deep this brotherhood ran. YNW Juvie, government name Christopher Thomas Jr., was born around 1999 and grew up in the same Gifford streets. He was 19 when his life got cut short on October 26, 2018. Word on the street was that Juvie was the realest in the group, the type of cat who kept it 100, even when everyone else was switching up. The family connections in this crew ran deeper than just friendship. Juvie shared a half-sister named Chloe with Bortlen, so we talking about real family ties here. YNW Sack Chaser, born Anthony DeAndre Williams around 1997, was another Gifford product who was 21 when tragedy struck on that October night. Sack Chaser was heavy in the music game, always featured in the collective's tracks and videos, representing for his crew and his city. His blood brother YNW Taliban has stayed solid with Melly through all this drama. These four young young cats represented hope for their whole community, but the group had connections to the Blood Street gang, specifically that violent G-Shine set. Melly had joined up young, throwing up gang signs in photos and videos, using that Bloods terminology where C's get replaced with B's, and referencing his affiliations in his rhymes. The streets were still calling, even as the music was taking off. His breakthrough came in 2018 with bangers like Murder on My Mind, which peaked at number 14 on the Billboard Hot 100. The irony of that song title, talking about homicidal thoughts, would hit different once everything came to light later. His debut mixtape, I Am You, was charting on the Billboard 200, and then We All Shine dropped with that double platinum hit Mixed Personalities, featuring Kanye West himself. But success can be poison to tight-knit crews when the money ain't flowing equally. The tension had been building for months, and it was all about that paper. When Melly signed to 300 Entertainment for somewhere between $200,000 to $500,000 in July 2018, his day ones felt like they got left in the cold. The feds later found text messages that allegedly showed Sack Chaser pressing Melly for his cut, with messages that basically said, "You blowing up, we still eating crumbs, pay up or we done." This type of drama tears apart crews all across the country. Melly's come-up had created serious bread problems within the squad, and his success was potentially threatening the whole power structure in their blood set. All four homies were connected with the YNW Bloods, also known as the Gifford Slimes, and when money and loyalty start beefing in the hood, somebody usually ends up in a body bag. The events that went down on October 26, 2018, changed the whole trajectory of everyone's lives. On that fatal night, Melly, Bortlen, and the two victims had been at a recording studio in Fort Lauderdale. The surveillance footage from New Era recording studios became crucial evidence, showing the crew leaving together at 4:08 a.m. The cameras caught all four soldiers dipping from the studio, and from the outside looking in, everything appeared peaceful. The way everyone positioned themselves in that rented gray Jeep Compass would later become key evidence for the prosecutors building their case. The footage shows Sack Chaser getting in what the streets would call the death seat, that front passenger position where you're most vulnerable. Meanwhile, the cameras caught Melly sliding into what prosecutors would later call the perfect position for an execution, right behind the driver where he could catch both his targets slipping. According to the D.A quote, "ES theory," this positioning wasn't no coincidence. As they cruised through some back roads near Miramar Parkway around 4:10 to 4:20 a.m., prosecutors say Melly started letting off shots from his back left position. The alleged attack was swift and merciless, giving the victims no opportunity to defend themselves or even comprehend what was happening. Sack Chaser allegedly took 8 shots, including fatal hits to the head, neck, and chest, while Juvie caught 4 bullets with similar deadly damage. The autopsy showed stippling, unburnt gunpowder on the entry wounds, meaning these shots came from point-blank range. No defensive wounds meant both victims never saw it coming. They probably thought they were just riding with their brother until the very last second. But according to the prosecution, the alleged murders were just the opening act of an elaborate cover-up that involved staging a fake crime scene and straight-up lying to law enforcement. The DA claims what happened next shows this wasn't no crime of passion. This was some calculated stone-cold killer activity. After allegedly smoking his homies, the shooters drove to a remote spot where they got out and started shooting up the whip from the outside. They allegedly used a different piece to make it look like some random cats had done a drive-by shooting. At 4:35 a.m., YNW Bortlen rolled up to Memorial Hospital Miramar with 2 bodies in the ride. Homie was cool as a cucumber when he told the doctors and police they got hit in a drive-by, but Melly was ghost. Supposedly got picked up from wherever they staged the fake shooting, leaving Bortlen to drop off the bodies and sell their cover story. Officer Jessica Amengor with the Miramar Police Department would later testify about what she observed that night when Cortland Henry rushed Anthony Williams and Christopher Thomas Jr. to a local hospital after they had been shot.
So he advised he just left the studio with his friends in Fort Lauderdale, and that he wasn't familiar with the area, but he had just gotten off a highway because they're staying at a home somewhere near the hospital. After he got off the highway, he stopped at a light, and then the car, he couldn't tell me exactly what kind of car it was, just started shooting at his vehicle. So he multiple times reenacting a story, he's going like this, because he's saying that he had to duck down in the driver's seat as he was driving to avoid being hit.
The officer's testimony revealed that Bortlen appeared to be an uninjured survivor of a random attack, showing no signs of being shot despite the vehicle being riddled with bullet holes.
Were you able to observe any injuries to Cortland Henry?
No.
Were you able to observe any blood?
No. I actually told him several times that he was lucky because for that many bullet holes, I was surprised he didn't get hit.
But the investigators' initial acceptance of the drive-by story wouldn't last long. What they discovered when they started really digging into the evidence would expose what they believed to be an elaborate deception. The feds connect the dots. When Miramar PD first rolled up to the hospital, they followed standard operating procedure for what seemed like a typical drive-by case that happens too frequently in urban communities. The initial story was textbook street violence. They were heading back to the crib from the studio when some unknown shooters pulled up and started busting. Bortlen's account sounded consistent with what officers had witnessed countless times before. Young brothers in the wrong place at the wrong time, victims of the kind of senseless violence that plagues the hood.
Okay, tell me what happened.
Man, I was playing music. Getting off the exit. I was already getting sleepy, almost home. You know what I'm saying? And like, just out of nowhere, like, I just heard, you know what I'm saying? So, and I ducked down, you know what I'm saying, in the car, and I almost crashed.
But when detectives went to verify his story, they found something that immediately raised red flags.
Here's the hard part, where we're having a hard time to understand, is that we shut down that entire area, and we had officers shoulder to shoulder walk it out. They didn't find as much as one shell casing. They didn't find one piece of glass, nothing. Nothing to what you said adds up.
This wasn't just suspicious, it was damn near impossible if Bortlen's story was legitimate. Drive-by shootings, especially ones involving this much gunfire, leave behind a massive trail of evidence. Shell casings from the shooter's weapons, glass fragments from shot-out windows, bullet impacts on nearby buildings or vehicles, tire marks from rapid acceleration or evasive maneuvers. None of it was there. For investigators who had worked hundreds of similar cases in the hood, this absence of physical evidence was a major red flag. What made it even more suspicious was the extensive damage to the Jeep itself. With 16 clearly identifiable bullet holes, including impacts that shattered multiple windows and penetrated the vehicle's body, the amount of gunfire involved should have left substantial traces at the alleged scene. They traced the crew's movements back to New Era recording studios and discovered that the spot had cameras covering everything. What they found on that surveillance footage would completely flip the script on the entire case.
In the video, that is the first time detectives learned that there was actually 4 people in that gray Jeep, and that the defendant, Jamel Demons, is in the rear driver's side seat.
This revelation was absolutely explosive. Bortlen had never mentioned that Melly was in the vehicle during his initial interviews with police. Now the cops realized they had a missing victim who should have been shot up too, unless he wasn't really a victim at all. Cell phone data would give investigators an unprecedented look into every move and communication from everyone involved. The digital footprint these cats left behind would end up being more damaging than any witness testimony. The precision of this cell phone tracking data provided investigators with a minute-by-minute reconstruction of the crew's movements that night, better than any street informant could provide. The cell tower data showed all 3 phones, Melly's, Sack Chaser's, and Juvie's, were at the same remote location near US 27 and Pembroke Road at 4:02 a.m. right when the murders supposedly went down. For 18 minutes until 4:20 a.m., all the phones moved together. Then Melly's phone split off while the others headed to the hospital.
Because at that location is where the cell phones of Christopher Thomas, Anthony Williams, and Jamel Demons all line up at 4:02 a.m. At that point, afterwards, Mr. Demons' phone tracks with the 2 victims until about 4:20.
But the digital evidence revealed something even more sophisticated than simple location tracking. Melly and Sack Chaser were using the exact same make and model of phone on the same service plan. This allowed investigators to track their movements in parallel with unprecedented accuracy. The data showed both phones traveling together to the remote location where the murders allegedly occurred, staying there for the critical time period, then separating with one phone heading back towards civilization, while the other continued to the hospital. Beyond just location data, the phones revealed crucial health and activity information that painted an even clearer picture of what allegedly went down. Melly's phone recorded step counts that showed 70 steps at the recording studio, another 70 steps at 4:02 a.m., the alleged murder time, and then 1,397 steps between 4:42 and 4:53 a.m. This digital footprint suggested significant physical activity during the time frame when he was allegedly arranging to be picked up from the crime scene. The ballistics evidence would provide perhaps the most damning proof of what investigators believed really popped off that night. Inside the Jeep, investigators found spent shell casings, proving shots were fired from within the vehicle, completely destroying the drive-by story. But this was just the beginning. More evidence would surface at that remote location. The cell phone data had pinpointed. At that isolated spot identified through the phone tracking, investigators found 8 more shell casings from a .40 caliber gun. The ballistics breakdown revealed two separate shooting incidents: the internal shots that killed the victims and the external shots fired afterwards to stage the fake drive-by. The forensic analysis of these shell casings revealed crucial details about the sequence of events that read like something out of a crime thriller. The casings found inside the vehicle were from a different caliber weapon than those found at the remote staging location. This suggested the perpetrators had used multiple firearms and had planned the crime with enough sophistication to attempt to confuse the ballistics evidence. Even more chilling was the trajectory analysis of the bullet paths through the vehicle. Trajectory analysis confirmed that the fatal shots had been fired from inside the car, specifically from the rear left passenger position, where surveillance footage showed Melly sitting. The angles and entry points were consistent with someone firing across the vehicle toward the front passenger seat and right rear passenger seat. The medical examiner's findings provided what prosecutors considered the most damning evidence of all, proof of just how calculated and stone cold the alleged operation really was. When the drive-by was staged at 4:02 a.m., the victims were already dead. The autopsy showed that the external gunshot wounds happened after death. The staging shots were fired into corpses to create the drive-by illusion. The investigation also uncovered digital communications that prosecutors claimed showed the cover-up happening in real time, like watching a street operation unfold through digital surveillance. Melly allegedly FaceTimed his girl while at the staging location, starting to build his alibi story. He also sent location pins to his peoples, asking for a pickup from the remote area. Melly and Bortlen were arrested on February 13, 2019, following a grand jury indictment. Both were charged with 2 counts of first-degree premeditated murder. Prosecutors accused Melly of being the triggerman who directly killed both victims with premeditation. He faces 2 counts of first-degree premeditated murder. If convicted, he could receive the death penalty, a possibility that was reinstated by an appellate court in November 2022, after a brief period where it was ruled out. Bortlen was initially charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder and 2 counts of accessory after the fact, accused of helping Melly stage the drive-by facade and lying to police about the events. He wasn't alleged to have fired the fatal shots, but played what prosecutors claimed was a key role in the cover-up, including driving the victims to the hospital and fabricating the entire drive-by story. The case would take years to come to trial, with both defendants remaining locked up as their legal teams fought over evidence, constitutional issues, and the admissibility of various pieces of digital evidence. Melly's first trial began with jury selection in April 2023 and opening statements in June 2023. The prosecution presented their case systematically, using the cell phone data, ballistics evidence, and digital communications to paint a picture of premeditated murder and elaborate cover-up. After 3 days of deliberation totaling 14 hours, the jury deadlocked, leading Judge John Murphy to declare a mistrial on July 22, 2023. Post-trial interviews revealed a split, with some jurors favoring conviction on lesser manslaughter charges, reportedly 9-3, influenced by one juror's disruptive behavior. But while Melly's legal journey was far from over, with a retrial scheduled for the distant future, the case was about to take yet another shocking turn in the form of Bortlen's plea agreement. If you enjoyed this video, click on the videos on your screen for more.